Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, Google, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
and Peter.
Episode 63, recorded on March 11th, 2020. The Cloud Pod stays home to enjoy the fireworks.
Yay!
Yeah, fireworks are always great. That'll be a good lead into an interesting story a little later about some bottle rockets. How's it going, Jonathan?
It's good, Justin. Get loads of stuff done. Feeling really good.
Yeah, I was feeling pretty good, and then I got sent home from work, and we're not going back to the office for several weeks. So that's a little bit of a bummer in the world.
Working at home with kids or getting coronavirus.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it would be so bad if they weren't on spring break for the next 2 weeks. It'd be fine if they were at school, but they're not. They're going to be here with me while I'm trying to work, so it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're hoping to get Peter, but apparently he booked his flight, so he arrives during the recording of the podcast. So we called in our good friend Ryan, as usual. Hey, Ryan.
How's it going? Always on deck.
Always on deck, on standby. It's always fun when we get the message from Peter, like, I can't do it tonight. We're like, okay, Ryan. And you're like, yeah, I could do it. It's fine.
Always on deck, huh? Seaman Lucas.
Well, I mean, I lead a very boring life, so I'm basically here just randomly doing stuff in my house at all times. So it's like, yeah, sure.
I mean, it's better than cleaning the house, right? Which was your other task.
Which is the thing that I should be doing right now, yes.
Yeah, see, just one more reason your wife can be mad at me.
Yes, she'll add it to the list.
On a sad note, we're going to start this week with the cancellation of most of the summits for AWS in April. That includes the Sydney, the Singapore, the Mumbai, the Paris, the San Francisco, and the Public Sector Summit in Brussels. This is all, of course, because of the coronavirus threat and the situation there and not wanting to bring large numbers of people together to potentially get infected. So I think it's the right call, but a bit disappointing for the 500 stickers I have in my car now, and a box that just arrived from Sticker Mule that I won't have a chance to give out at the San Francisco Summit. So that's a bit of a bummer. But I think it's the right call. What do you guys think?
I wouldn't want to go even if they hadn't cancelled it. So yeah, I think it's fair.
It's just responsible at this point. Like, it's reading all the news. It's not about stopping it necessarily. It's about slowing it down, and you know, it's. Yeah,
I was thinking about that. Like, it's inevitable that millions of people are going to get it, but at least if you slow it down, then the healthcare system can slightly deal with it a little bit better, or a little bit more efficiently. So yeah,
I saw this comment, I think, on Twitter, and someone was saying, we did such a great job scaling all of our technology solutions and websites, but we didn't do such a good job scaling our healthcare system or designing it for scale. Yeah, so that's a bummer. Hopefully these will become digital conferences, though, where you can go online and not pay attention to a webinar, which is what I'm afraid will happen with these. But we'll see how Google Next goes, and as well as these summits as they get rescheduled as webinars. If that's interesting, or if they are able to make them more compelling than a normal webinar. The one thing that's interesting to me about this is Amazon's also sent all their workers home. They're about a week and a half ahead of us. So I'm hoping that we get some really good features for Amazon Chime, since they're now all forced to use it in a pretty aggressive way.
All right, you've won the lightning round regardless. Regardless of the fact that we're not doing it like that anymore. So
I did get a tweet when I tweeted that out, and someone from Amazon reached out on the Chime team. I was like, "Oh, I'd love to hear your feedback or what you'd like to see in the product." And I was like, "Okay, I'll get back to you on that."
They're gonna regret that tweet.
Like, I've been trying to call you on Chime, but it just doesn't work.
Or unfortunately, because I know your email address, I can call you directly on Chime.
Exactly. What I really want is it to not ask me how my call was every time I hang up a call.
Seriously,
it's like, I'll tell you if it's bad.
Skype does the same thing, though. It's like, you should already know. You shouldn't have to ask me. You should know. You have the metrics.
There's got to be an algorithm that'll tell them, right? That's what you think.
Yeah, I suppose it's about measuring your perception of it rather than the actual facts.
Yeah, it could be.
But still, yeah, annoying. It's better not having to use Chime, but having to fill out the survey every time is like even worse.
Well, I have multiple production workloads on Amazon, so that's what I answer on every survey. About a month or two back, we talked about on the show that Amazon had won that injunction against the DoD and Microsoft for the JEDI contract. And so it's come out now that was based on the fact that Amazon was able to prove to a judge that Microsoft should have been disqualified due to the type of data storage that Amazon says does not meet their requirements. The non-compliant storage solution allows its rival to offer an artificially low price for the capability, and that's how, like I said, they convinced the judge. The DoD says that they are arguing over superficial labels rather than actual performance, and that Amazon's own proposed solution would also be technically deficient. Unfortunately, the specific type of storage is still redacted in the latest legal documents that were published, but they did mention that even if it was a deficiency, you have to mark that as a deficiency in the awarding, which was not done for Azure. And so I think that's what Amazon's point is that clearly something was missed in the due diligence for this awarding of JEDI. So very interesting. We'll see where that goes. Hopefully they'll tell us what the magical Azure storage solution, maybe it's the ultra premium blob storage, doesn't quite meet the correct requirements. We'll only know when they tell us.
It was strange because it said something, the wording was that it was around an online storage requirement. And I'm like, isn't all cloud storage online storage?
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Yeah, it's a little strange. But the other thing I was thinking is that there must be more to the complaint than just the storage. I assume Amazon went into the courtroom with one definitive thing that they could not waste time on, just go in and get it done.
Well, I think
I'm sure there's more to it.
Yeah, for the injunction, they just need to prove that something was done improperly during the awarding of the contract. I think they have a ton of other arguments of why they're saying it shouldn't have been awarded and it was, political interference by Trump and all that. I think that's going to be part of the larger contract. This is just the way for them to block progress on the JEDI contract in the short term, which I don't know if I was on the government side how I feel about all this red tape being thrown in my way about my vendor, but we'll see.
I find it interesting that they're saying, well, Amazon's solution's technically deficient, which is sort of like throwing in the towel on this isn't technically, it's not sufficient at all for our needs.
This is or this is a requirement that clearly is not good.
Yeah, this is all wrong in so many ways. So it's interesting.
Yeah,
so I'm dying for details to dive into the nitty gritty on this and see what they actually are looking for.
Yeah, this case is going to be interesting when they finally give us technical details. This one and the Paige Thompson Capital One case will be really interesting to see the technical details that come out at trial, because I think it's going to be quite interesting. But we'll see. Well, if you are looking to build an architecture around cloud provider solutions, you want to foster an open-minded attitude in the networking world. And at a recent conference put on by Aviatrix, they discussed that not all major cloud providers are the same. And there was an interesting quote in the article from Justin Broadley.
Who?
They all very specific. Yes.
There's two Justin Broadleys.
Yeah.
Well,
you said it was interesting.
I mean, it's from me, so why would I not want to quote myself in my own podcast? They all have very specific design philosophies that allow them to be successful in different ways, and you have to keep that in mind as you architect your own solutions. For example, Amazon has a very regional affinity. They don't like to go cross-region in their architecture, whereas Google has a global network and thinks in terms of a global solution. So, which I've said here on the podcast many times. So.
I find it amazing how you read that as though you were quoting somebody else rather than just.
I know, it was great, wasn't it?
Voice.
I know, it was great, wasn't it? You're welcome.
Seems so much smarter when you quote it that way.
I know, it sounds so much better. Yeah, I actually watched the video. I've been on video now twice in the last year for different Amazon or different vendor things, and I typically don't watch them. And my wife was like, "No, you did really good. You should watch it." And so I watched it. It was actually decent. So
nice. Practically famous.
Practically famous. Yep. Well, VMware is embracing Kubernetes in the biggest product blitz in over a decade. They have announced the imminent launch of vSphere 7.0. That includes the long-awaited Tanzu Kubernetes platform. Last year at VMworld, they announced this as tied it to the Pivotal acquisition, and we talked about it here on the show. Initially, the new vSphere will only be available through the VMware Cloud Foundation, which is their hybrid cloud offering, which bundles in higher levels of security and more expansive lifecycle management for software-defined compute, storage, and network. But will be expanded to vSphere on-premise sometime a little bit later in the year. And the new Kubernetes-specific requirements are the new Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, the Tanzu Mission Control capability, and the Tanzu App Catalog, which is like a platform as a service type offering on top of all of this. So we will see if VMware can crack the enterprise story of Kubernetes.
Mission Control is the make or break. I really think that if they can offer the Kubernetes experience to the developers, but have the visibility and provide it in a dashboardy view that someone can manage from a security and governance and an IT point of view, it's really going to make or break what VMware can bring to this market. So it is really trying to marry two worlds together. So I'm excited to play with it and see if it's feature complete or more than just a whole lot of smoke. but it is interesting. I do like their play.
I wish they could orchestrate virtual machines, though, in the same way that they're going to orchestrate Docker containers. I mean, imagine you start getting native auto scaling and VMware and things like that. It would be neat.
It's fascinating they haven't really focused, because it's really just about API-driven choices, right? API-driven orchestration, and so you get some really cool features in VMware, like vMotion, but none of it's really exposed directly to a developer, to an end user sort of point of view. It's still all sort of geared towards an administrator that's managing this for you. And so if they focused the other way around, it might be a little interesting. It might be, a better product. It might make, running just straight VM containers more palatable. But
yeah, I think my first shock at the thing was like, can you imagine opening up the vSphere, either the console or some kind of API to engineers? And then I thought we might have people like that listening to our show, so I wasn't going to say too much about it. But I hope they got some pretty good fine-grained permissions on the thing.
Right. Well, that's the big problem, right? So Kubernetes, I don't know how many times I've seen a Kubernetes cluster where it's just wide open, right? Because Kubernetes authentication is actually quite hard. You can gate by namespaces, and you can do some things, but then administering and keeping those up in order is problematic. And then VMware's native solution is like, well, don't let anyone have access.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. I do look forward to seeing some Terraform providers for this as well. Well, moving on to Amazon, one of my big pet peeves is, when you have an alarm that has another alarm, and then you have another alarm, and they're all tied to the same host. And so now all four of them are paging me for CPU, memory, and disk, and the host is down when I don't care about the disk and memory when this host is actually down. So Amazon is now fixing that with the new CloudCrotch composite alarms, which allow you to combine multiple alarms to reduce alarm noise and focus on critical operational issues. It also supports alarm hierarchies that only trigger when multiple alarms fire at the same time. You can also do some of the groupings based on AWS things like AWS region or availability zone. And composite alarms still publish SNS topics, enable you to trigger auto-scaling or auto-healing actions. So this is pretty great.
Yeah, I immediately was trying to think of use cases for this, like, thinking about putting machines in and out of rotation so that they don't alarm when certain things, like only under certain conditions, because you can do negative as well, like, only if these two are positive, or only if it's kind of neat how you can play with the thresholds there. There's a lot of different use cases where I can think I would use this.
I'd like to be able to mute alarms during maintenance windows. Now they have the change calendar. It'd be cool to mute CloudWatch alarms that trigger during changes, especially for resources that you're scheduling to work on. But I think that the other thing I'd like to see is more of like relationships between different resources. And so if things alert, you can see all of the resources in the path which may be affected by a particular change, like upstream or downstream.
Yeah, it'd be a good enhancement to this. Maybe we should AWS wishlist this.
Yeah.
You can now host your apps with the AWS Amplify console via S3 and CloudFront. And they finally gave a really great definition of what they think Amazon Amplify is, which they're saying is an opinionated framework for building modern applications with a toolchain for easily adding services like authentication via Cognito or storage S3, or using GraphQL APIs via command line interface. This supports all of your fancy-dancy front-end languages like Angular, React, Vue.js, Ionic, Ember, and then static file generators like Gatsby, Hugo, Press, and Jekyll. And there have been several other updates for Amplify that come out over the last few months. So if you checked it out last year, do check it out again, as they've added quite a few functionalities that we have not fully covered here on the show, just because we really weren't clear what it was going to do or what you would want it. But now we have a decent definition. We can talk about it more.
Feeling very heard, because we talked about this previously, and I'm like, I have no idea what this is. So this is the first article where I'm like, oh, I get this.
Yeah.
I understand now.
It makes sense. It's like a platform as a service for web apps. I know when I first tried playing with it many moons ago, when we first kicked off the website for the CloudPod, I tried to use Jekyll with this, and it didn't quite work where I wanted to go. The AWS Serverless Application Repository is adding support for sharing applications with your Amazon organization. This allows you to take privately shared apps stored in the repo and cross them to any AWS account with an organization ID attached to them. You can also define separate resource-based policy statements directly from the console and select the actions permitted under each statement to use these particular actions. So if you have a very common like logging enhancement Lambda function like we do, you can then put that into an application repository, and teams can deploy that directly from the repo that'll be updated from the central location. So this is pretty nice for some very interesting CI/CD implications, as well as for keeping your Lambda functions up to date across all of your accounts.
Yeah, anything you can manage at an organization level is a huge benefit. And then you just have to sort of worry about the coordination of managing or, educating these teams to deploy it into their accounts or however you work it. But it's, these are the great reuse of code opportunities here. Pretty fantastic.
It'd be nice if you could actually push out the applications to all your accounts as well with something like this. And not just make it available, but actually deploy it. I guess you can do it with CloudFormation, but it's not quite as easy as just pushing a button.
Yeah, but it's the repository, right? So it's providing a central place for all these things to get pulled from. So without having to coordinate network access to some sort of internal share or something along those lines, you can provide access and coordinate with, like you said, something like CloudFormation.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the CloudPod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
I know you guys are both amazing database admins who love everything database. And now you can show your love for those databases by getting Amazon certification for databases. This is a new specialty certification that allows you to prove to people that you understand everything about RDS, Aurora, and the many other database offerings and your expertise of using those. You can schedule your exam at a testing center worldwide at $300, or you can get an online practice exam for $40 to see if you're ready to go. And the database experience and depth of knowledge help Amazon customers feel confident that they're getting the right database for the job and a team that can deliver on scalability and security requirements.
And schedule today, and you'll be guaranteed a space anytime you like, because that room will be empty.
Yeah, I was a little surprised they didn't take this opportunity to announce virtual proctoring for all of their tests. That might have been something we could all do while we're working from home, is working on our exams.
I don't know if I need to spend $300 to prove to myself that I don't understand how databases work.
I mean, you can only spend $40 and no, you don't understand how databases work. So there's that option as well.
That's true. I guess, the practice exam would educate me all the same.
Yeah, I'm sure that all of our friends at A Cloud Guru and Udemy and all these other places will have practice exams available for you as well. Amazon EKS finally supports Kubernetes version 1.15. This was talked about back in November that if they were on their timeline for when they released 1.14, it was about 90 days after they released 1.13. So they thought that they would have this out in December. It is now March, and they are finally shipping it, and just in time for 1.15 to basically be end of life in a very few short weeks. This was an important release as it does support the new Knative capabilities and the new versions. This is the lowest version of Kubernetes you can be on for Knative. And AWS has added some additional features, including TLS termination on network load balancers, improved support for custom resource definitions, as well as the node local DNS cache feature is now graduating to beta status. If you are using Kubernetes 1.12, I don't know what's wrong with you at this point, but that's not being deprecated, and you should definitely move to at least 1.15, which raises an interesting question for you guys. What do you think the right upgrade strategy is for upgrading Kubernetes? Do you think it's upgrade in place, or do you think it's spin up a new cluster and move your containers?
But is there any orchestration that can migrate workloads between clusters?
I mean, yes, technically you could do that.
I wouldn't say I don't know of anything natively able to do that. Between clusters, no. So it is sort of this interesting, I always recommend like a brute force sort of method of, migrating to clusters, but it does take a fair amount of outside orchestration to make that happen, because you do have to redeploy your apps one by one to the new cluster and migrate, and only then can you terminate the old cluster.
So maybe we have like a front-end Kubernetes cluster, which farms out traffic to two other Kubernetes clusters, the old version and the new version. Yeah.
But you still have that Kubernetes cluster in the front that has to be upgraded still too.
Oh, yeah. That's easy, because then you have another one of those which farms out things to another one, and then above that there's another cluster which manages that for you.
Yeah, so it was interesting because with this coming out so late, there's a lot of conversations on Reddit and on the issue and GitHub. And so I was reading up on this, and people were saying, I don't know why they even bothered with 1.15. I don't know why they didn't just bump to 1.16 or 1.17. And they were talking about the requirement to upgrade your cluster. So if you want to go from 1.13 to 1.15, you have to hit 1.14 in the middle, and then 1.15, then you go to 1.16. There's no going from 1.13 to 1.16 directly, for example. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I actually didn't know that was even capable. I just thought you just built a new cluster and you migrated your apps. So that was news to me. But then I was thinking about the complexity of that, and as Ryan was saying, that does seem pretty awful. But one of the interesting things, they didn't put it in the press release, but they did talk about it on both the GitHub issues and on the Reddit. One of the big investments they made as part of this 1.15 was fixing a lot of the automation tooling, so they could potentially release new versions of Kubernetes much faster in the future, as they are very cognizant of the fact that they are behind where they need to be, and they should be at 1.16 and 1.17 very quickly, hopefully, if those investments panned out as they hope they do.
Wow, look at those guys investing in the future.
Maybe.
Yeah, and they basically said, yes, we're sorry it took this long to get to 1.15, but we think this is the right investment in being able to be future proof. And I think that's, if it pans out to be actually they can reduce that 90-day window down to 45 days or something more reasonable, I think we'll all thank them later. So we'll keep an eye on that here at the Cloud Pod.
I guess they'll always be behind, though. I mean, Google could be potentially working on new features that they know about before they push them out to the public repo, and so they can be much better prepared.
Yeah, but even on GKE, we haven't seen them, adopt the new version of Kubernetes right away. It's typically a few weeks before they adopt the new Kubernetes. I think they just came out with GKE 1.17 support in the early release channel. It's not even in the production channel yet. So there's still a gap. It's just a question of how long is that gap going to be for most releases.
It takes them that long to figure out how much more they're going to charge for it, though.
No, that's true. Well, one of the other conversations that was happening was that they might have delayed Kubernetes EKS at 1.15 for this next feature, which is the new Bottle Rocket, a new open source Linux-based operating system purpose-built to run containers. Amazon is announcing this is a public preview of Bottle Rocket. Bottle Rocket includes a single-step update mechanism and includes only the essential software to run your containers, very similar to like a CoreOS. This allows you to use container orchestrators to manage OS updates with minimal disruption, enabling better uptime for containerized applications and lower operational costs. So again, I'm glad to see a nice, good replacement for CoreOS that is not owned by Red Hat.
Didn't they kill CoreOS?
They did.
Yeah.
Kind of. So they released Container OS Fedora and Container OS CentOS, I believe. So they sort of merge them together. But I can't imagine that other than keeping probably the base level of what they were trying to provide with CoreOS's Container OS, I can't imagine they've kept much just because they were such radically different operating systems.
Yeah, I mean, if CoreOS wasn't even based in the Red Hat ecosystem, so the packaging system was different and everything, so it's...
I think we researched at one point, we found out it was closer to Google Chrome in lineage than it was to to Red Hat or anything. It was very different. And so I'm really excited about this new. They kept basically all of my favorite features of CoreOS. The fact that it's open source, the fact that you can play with it and you can build it on your own. It updates itself behind the scenes, and you can launch an administrative container inside of the OS, which automatically mounts all the underlying system level stuff, and you can actually do debug stuff, which is kind of neat because I was playing around. It doesn't support ECS today. It's only open for EKS. ECS is on the roadmap, but it's not out yet.
Huh, that's interesting.
It is. But it's largely just because, if you know how Kubernetes versus ECS works, it does make actually a lot of sense. ECS is running, in Linux land, it's running as a Docker container on there, but you also need to have orchestration into the file system for read configs and other things like that, which is what they probably can't support, as a lot of that, making sure the service is up and launching it.
That's interesting. I guess from a business perspective, if you're already using ECS, then you're already a customer, whereas something like this may entice people over from Google GKE now.
It could be. Still, this is more along the lines of if you're running EC2, even on ECS, Fargate's managed for you behind the scenes, but if you're running an EC2 workload, for some reason, this manages a ton of operational overhead for you. The only thing you have to really figure out is how to reboot in a sane manner and move your workloads around right now, which Kubernetes does natively. So I'm pretty sure that's part of the reason. Like it's a lot easier to orchestrate. But I'm daydreaming ways since I'm not a heavy Kubernetes user, and I don't really have, since most of my container workloads are single tenant, I don't have really the need to do a whole bunch of traffic management. I'm daydreaming on how I can usurp their administrative container and use it to basically configure the hosts I want. And you can launch and configure that administrative container via API, which is my favorite part.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you done talking about that?
Sorry, I nerded out and I put Justin to sleep.
You did. It was good, though. I'm awake.
You don't know. You weren't listening.
I wasn't. That's fine. I knew everything you said already.
Justin's all about the Tupperware containers.
Yeah. Tupperware.
Hey, I like Tupperware. Hey, Tupperware is awesome. I spent more money in Tupperware than I should have in my lifetime, I'm sure. Google Cloud is unveiling a new strategy for the telecommunications industry. This is a new gesture to the mobile industry to enable Google Cloud at the edge. And this is through the new Global Mobile Edge Cloud, or GMEC strategy, which will deliver a portfolio and marketplace of 5G solutions built jointly with telecommunication companies, an open cloud platform for developing these network-centric apps, and a globally distributed edge for optimally deploying these solutions. And the first partnership in this new arrangement is the AT&T and Google are announcing this partnership for enterprise to take advantage of Google Cloud's technologies and capabilities using AT&T's network at the edge, including 5G. And they also announced the launch of Anthos for telecom, which will bring its Anthos cloud application platform to the network edge, allowing telecommunications companies to run their applications wherever it makes the most sense.
Congratulations. Telecom can now spend $10K a month too. Woohoo. Welcome to the fold.
I did not see pricing for Anthos Telecom. I was wondering if it was the same price or not, but yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if they'll let me run my Anthos in their telecom edge. That'd be the question I want to know.
I just wonder who Oracle Cloud's going to partner up with. If you have Google partnering with AT&T, you have AWS partnering with Verizon. Is Oracle Cloud going to partner with Cricket Wireless?
Yeah, Cricket's singular. Yeah.
I mean, I guess Azure needs to rush to go sign that Sprint T-Mobile deal so they can partner. I mean, T-Mobile's headquarters is is not that far south of Redmond, so T-Mobile actually makes the most sense, I think, maybe for Microsoft. But if they were to look for a partner who's close.
Who's going to partner with the SpaceX Starlink network, though? That'd be kind of cool.
That'd be cool. I don't think Azure's that forward-thinking, but yeah, maybe. There's
no partnering. There's no partnering. They'll just build their own.
Oh yeah,
cellular network.
Yeah.
From scratch.
Yeah, I like how they did close the story on. We think they're going to spin off Starlink, and no, we're not going to spin off Starlink. Yeah, I don't think so. Most large organizations run 6 or even more monitoring tools. Each of them uses a mixture of data collection techniques from technology providers, open source communities, or custom integrations, and maintaining dozens of integrations across these tools can be a significant investment. Blue Medora introduces BindPlane, not another monitoring platform, but the industry's first monitoring integration as a service. BindPlane can gather data from over 150 technology data sources spanning your entire organization. Remove or reduce your reliance on expensive monitoring and SIEM solutions by sending log data to Google Stackdriver, New Relic, or Azure Monitor. Check out the extensive list of integrations, all provided at no additional cost. Learn more and sign up for a free trial by visiting bluemedora.com/cloudpod. The link's available in our show notes, and as a bonus for CloudPod listeners, Blue Medora are offering Google Compute Platform credits to help get you started. BindPlane. Seamlessly stream hybrid cloud and on-premise metric and log data.
Google is announcing they will be launching additional cloud regions in Delhi, Doha, Qatar, and Melbourne, Australia, and Toronto, Canada. Each of the new regions will have 3 zones to protect against these service disruptions, launch with a portfolio of key GCP products, and offer lower latency near their users. Google also in this article mentioned that they have several priorities when they consider new regions. The first one being they want to provide multiple in-country DR options. Cough, Amazon, please do that too. Give you control of your data and build with sustainability in mind, taking advantage of those green initiatives that they have going on in the Google world. So that is pretty nice. Got to see additional Australia regions as well as India and Qatar. That's really great.
Yeah, this sent me on a little bit of like a clickhole expedition because I was like, what do they mean by sustainability? And so, reading through the article, and then there's actually a ton of content about what they mean by sustainability. Like they go into immense detail of percent of solar and percent of hydro and where it comes from and energy providers and their carbon net neutrality. And like there's a bunch of information and I was very surprised at how transparent they're being with how they're proving that sustainability and how they're achieving that and how they're measuring themselves as well. Like it's a very interesting set of documentation they have. And I can tell it's interesting by the silence.
Jonathan's still trying to figure out where Qatar is. He's like, I don't know where that's at. That's not a British colony. I'm sorry. It's not taught in geography in Britain.
No. I was trying to find my predictions because I remember predicting that this year there'll be growth at data centers, but I'm pretty sure I said Africa. And so far, there's been data centers popping up everywhere except the African continent. So I still got time. I still got time.
Next year, you maybe want to make that a little bit more broad statement.
Yeah.
If we'll let you get away with it.
I mean, he did choose a whole continent.
He did.
Like a hemisphere?
And if he was like, I want to take the entire, from Russia to Africa, continents, I don't know we would have let him do that. So it's probably
just like a game of Risk. That's very hard to do.
Right. Yes. Data centers will be deploying more data centers. Yeah, I guess so.
Google is introducing a new machine image. This new type of compute engine resource that contains all the information you need to create, backup, or restore the virtual machine, reducing the amount of time you spend running and managing your environment. Machine images may sound familiar to you if you're familiar with custom images, but Google likes to point out there are some key differences between them. The first is a custom image typically captures the contents of a single drive, for example, the boot disk, which can be used to create new instances, and you can install your applications in the C drive or root partition, whatever. You can do all those type of things. With the new machine images, they are more comprehensive in that they allow you to contain multiple disks, as well as the information required to capture and create new instances, including instance properties like the machine type, labels, volume mapping, network tags, data of all the attached disks, instance metadata, and permissions, including the service account used to create the instance. This all supports the same technologies like incremental backups and normal imaging things, and is a interesting improvement. But I do have to say Amazon had this one first with launch sets and launch configurations, and then of course you can always create volumes from a snapshot and attach them anytime you want to. But hey, Google, I'm super happy for you.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking this had been stuck in the blog pipeline for a few years or something, but yeah, I mean, to be fair, Amazon only several months ago announced that you could save the metadata of the image of the instances along with the snapshots. So they're not that far behind, but.
Well, I mean, and in fairness, that is something that's relatively new. But I think that concept of taking a image and saying, I'm going to be able to attach multiple volumes to it or have the set of configuration like the machine type and the labels and the volume mappings, that's all launch configuration stuff that Amazon's had for a long time. And so that part, it feels a little bit chintzy to me that they're thinking of something unique. But the metadata thing is new, and it is not available to you as an image, I don't believe. It is an AMI image attribute in Amazon. It is available to you in that backup DR capability, not in this one.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at this and I was trying to figure out like, where would I use this? And I could not come up with a use case, but I could think of a lot of ways that this could go wrong.
I mean, I think I built something similar to this with Lambda functions, and I could maybe do this with a Terraform module if I really wanted to. This kind of concept of these different parameters and such. But it's nice that it's native to the platform, and I'm sure some customer desperately wanted the ability to have multiple drives in their image.
I wonder if this is more of a DR play too, because you can have all these cold just sitting there, and then your DR event. It's just like you literally recreating the same machine somewhere else.
Oracle databases in the cloud.
Well, I mean, and you can keep all the configurations of all your awful Veritas file systems for that. So it's great. Well, moving on to Azure, they are announcing the preview of Backup Reports. This stunning, innovative feature called Backup Reports allows you to perform real-time monitoring of your backups, helping you achieve increased efficiency in your day-to-day operations. The Backup Reports are a one-stop destination for tracking usage, auditing of backups and restores, and identifying key trends at different levels of granularity. And the report works across multiple workload types that are supported by Azure Backup. Rich slicing, dicing, and drill-down capabilities are available, and it is a native Azure-based experience, meaning it uses their fantastic UI paradigm.
I don't know if you at home could hear the smile and snark coming out of Justin. But yeah, it's palpable. I actually really like this feature. They're making fun of me for it. No, backups are stupid, right? No one likes backups. No one likes paying attention to backups, but they're necessary when you need them. If they're not there, it's a big problem. And so anything they can do where I can just quickly glance and be like, is there red on that dashboard? Then I have to pay attention, but hopefully everything's all green and I never have to pay attention again, which is what I do normally, which is never pay attention and then just pray for the best. So I do like this.
It is nice to have that one-stop shop, but a full press release is a bit much.
I'm just hoping the requirement for backups and the backup management goes away as people adopt more and more cloud services, because think about storage. You've got versioned objects, and I think this could be provided natively without us having to worry about running a backup at a particular time and having it pass or fail and alerting somebody and having them fix it and do it manually. Like, there's no reason why all of this data management couldn't just become part of the platform. So I think I'm going to sell my stock in Veritas and Symantec and everybody else, and in a few years this will be a non-issue, I think.
I mean, hopefully. I mean, a lot of these things are because of compliance controls, right? It's like you have to prove your backups are working. You have to prove that when they don't work, you get a notification.
I'm hoping all the auditors right now sort of retire, and then we get some new auditors who are cloud aware, who realize that object management and other cloud native services can provide the same resiliency of data without actually...
Well, I mean, let's take baby steps. Can we get auditors who understand DevOps concepts first?
Well, sometimes there's an advantage to having auditors which don't quite know what's going on, because you can,
You do get away with a little bit.
A little bit.
You're like, no, it works because it's magic.
A little bit more than usual.
Well, PowerShell 7 has arrived on the scene. PowerShell 7 is, of course, the next major release of PowerShell. It follows PowerShell 6, if you didn't know.
Oh, wow.
The latest release makes PowerShell a truly cross-platform automation tool and configuration framework. With PowerShell 7, in addition to the new commandlets and APIs, and bug fixes, of course, because there's always bugs, there are several new features, including pipeline parallelization for each object parallels, new operators, including ternary operators, pipeline chain operators, and null condition operators, a simplified and dynamic error view and get error commandlet for easier investigation of errors, which will happen often in PowerShell, a compatibility layer that enables users to import modules in an implicit Windows PowerShell session, automatic new version notifications, and the ability to invoke DSC resources directly from PowerShell 7. This is marked experimental, so be careful on that one. And under the hood, this includes the move from .NET Core 2.x to 3.1, which allows you a new set of .NET Framework APIs, enabling greater backward compatibility and new UI capabilities never before had in a scripting language.
Where has this been all my life? Oh, dear me. The features they're implementing have been around in other languages for decades.
But now they're new to Windows people because they didn't exist before, Jonathan. So they are finding the light of Bash finally in PowerShell with these new capabilities.
I do find it funny because PowerShell 2 or something, when it was first sold to me by my Windows friendly friend at the time, he was touting it as it was a Bash replacement. And it was just not fully featured. And so to see some of these things, being able to pipe an end based on success or failure, it is sort of funny. I'm like, oh, they just got that, huh? All right, so you have to rewrite all of your logic on your project that you're working on now to adopt this new.
No, I don't think so. We're still on that old version of Windows. So to try and much like trying to run a later version of Python on your Mac, trying to run multiple versions of PowerShell on Windows is a little bit more painful.
Gotcha.
But coming
also
soon.
More explosive.
You can always run it in a Docker container.
Oh, that's right. You also can run PowerShell on Linux. I don't know if you knew that. So you can take this fantastic PowerShell 7 capabilities and you can use it on your Linux host, Jonathan.
You can, and I can see this being useful if you're going to run SQL Server or something on Linux or any other kind of ported Windows applications, because PowerShell, it seems very nicely tailored to the Windows management system and the Windows platform. And I don't know that people would want to pivot to something like PowerShell to start managing Linux machines or Mac OS or things like that. But if it's to manage a Windows product, then you can start using the same tools cross-platform, and that just makes things easier for everyone.
So for the same reasons why I think Bash will never go away, PowerShell will always be sort of like...
Well, I mean, there's no other option on Windows other than PowerShell or batch files, and batch files are even more limited in their capabilities. Or you run into VB script, which I don't really want to do ever again if I can help it. So, I mean, of all the choices that I have on Windows, PowerShell is the least offensive of all of them.
It's funny, so I've been automating the databases, SQL servers with PowerShell, and I've realized that the T-SQL, which has been part of SQL Server for 20 plus years, it's actually powerful enough to replace almost all the functionality I had in PowerShell. So previously I had, I'd make a query to a database and I'd do something in PowerShell with the data and then do something else. I've replaced almost all of that code with just native T-SQL code because it's so much better documented and so much easier and more understandable.
Well, that's interesting because it is, the SQL team, when they first adopted, they basically took it away from the database people and gave it to engineers and said, you need to rewrite this thing. And they came out with the early versions of SQL 2000 and with the MSC controllers and all that. There's a lot of hatred about how much dev coding had ended up inside of SQL. But you see kind of over time how that's continued to evolve and become more and more of a programming language unto itself. And there's some really interesting things you can do with SQL Server and T-SQL that I don't recommend necessarily, but you can do them. So... Well, that is it for the new news. And since we have a guest host, we are doing weekend update format lightning round since it's not scored.
Sorry, Wayne.
And hopefully... Oh, sorry, what?
Sorry, Wayne.
Sorry, Wayne. So we will get started here. I have the first one out of the box, and we will go Jonathan and then Ryan as we go through the lightning round.
Prepare to be amused. Commence laughing in 3, 2, 1...
Web application firewall with Azure Front Door Service now supports exclusion lists. It's like a virtual bouncer for your website. To always get around this exclusion list, just use the MS Edge browser. They got to get market share somehow.
And vulnerability scanning for images in Azure Container Registry is now GA, meaning you can scan those massive Windows containers of vulnerabilities that increase exponentially every patch Tuesday. Why, Microsoft? Why?
Azure Security Center now supports integration with Azure Monitor Alerts because it's good to know when your infrastructure has been completely owned because of those container vulnerabilities.
Azure has improved resource governance for Azure Analytics Services. The most important is, of course, make sure the CEO's report runs as fast as humanly possible. Everyone else can wait.
And you can now use AWS CloudFormation to provision AWS chatbots. This also means you can now create a wormhole. Alexa, tell CloudFormation to configure Slack to launch Lex in US East 1.
AWS RoboMaker simulation now supports GUI streaming for robot and simulation. Who's not a robot now? Screw you, reCAPTCHA.
Try again.
Damn. AWS Simulation now supports GUI streaming for robot and simulation applications. Who's not a robot now? Screw you, reCAPTCHA.
All right, you got it right that time.
Okay. I got to get all the words?
Well, you said them all right the first time, but you failed the reCAPTCHA.
It looked like a light pole.
It was a stop
sign. Is that an L or a 7? I can't really tell.
It was a stop sign.
It sort of cuts off at the top. Is that still cool? Yeah.
Can you imagine a Google self-driving car? Like if they run out of information or something, you're going to stop at some weird intersection, waiting for somebody to complete the reCAPTCHA to tell the car whether or not it can carry on or if it's going to stop.
That is a traffic light, Google. Come on. AWS WAF now supports anonymous IP lists for AWS managed rules. Who's trying to access the site? It's anonymous. Sounds legit. Let them right in to those Windows containers.
Azure Cosmos DB, Jupyter Net. Azure Cosmos. Azure Cosmos DB, Jupyter Notebooks are now in preview. Cosmos and Jupyter? I see what you did there, Azure. Nice job.
Amazon EKS adds envelope encryption for secrets with AWS KMS. Fortunately for me, I write all of my secrets on envelopes, and I tape them to the bottom of my keyboard.
I have a Post-it stuck on my keyboard that says, try harder.
Nice.
Amazon Aurora with PostgreSQL compatibility supports in-place upgrades from Postgres 9.6 to 10. If a Postgres tree falls in the woods and no one is there to hear the screams of the DBAs, did it really upgrade?
I gotta stop smiling so much.
Serious face.
I got a new cat the other day, and introducing a cat into the household is rather troublesome because we already have a cat, and one of the cats is trying to gnaw its way through the door or something into where I am. It's very distracting. But hey, I've got 2 cats now, so great.
Yeah. Who's winning now?
Redshift is announcing column-level access controls. Dramatically. Wow, that's a new word.
Yeah.
Dramatically increasing support calls that go like, I select star from the DB, but I only got 6 columns, but Nancy got 8, so it's broken.
Do you want to retry that since you mess up dramatically?
I can fix it.
Okay. The editor's got this. That's great.
Yeah.
But that's so right. At least you should return the columns, but not any data in them, so at least you know that you're not getting the data in the columns you're not allowed to have.
Hey, don't mess with the joke.
Feature request.
AWS Code Commit introduces an open source remote handler. The only thing more remote is the possibility that I'll actually use Code Commit.
AWS adds the ability for customers to enable AWS local zones themselves, just in time for coronavirus self-quarantine into the local zone. Bring toilet paper.
But there's not left.
Yeah.
I started saving the newspapers. Yeah, East Bay Times. It's going to be one use for it.
Yeah, exactly. That's about all I can think of.
Microsoft is preparing for TLS 1.2 in Azure, living up to the motto, marching headlong into 2008.
You can now export Power BI reports into PDF, PPTX, or PNG. Unfortunately, the PowerPoint report still says the same thing, that Amazon Quick Start adoption is dropping at an alarming rate. Too true.
That is too true. Yes, too true. And that is it for our weekend update edition of Lightning Round. So Peter's back next week. We'll go back to the old format, but we'll see. We'll see if he comes back from Mexico or gets quarantined. Well, here we normally would talk about things that are coming up, but everything's canceled. So nothing's coming up in the next few weeks. So we'll just keep coming back to you here at the Cloud Pod as we talk about all these amazing features coming from the cloud providers. I am hoping for a really fantastic set of releases for Chime in about 6 to 9 months after all the Amazon work from home people realize how bad Chime is and fix it. So I do look forward to Chime 2.0. If you're out there, please stay healthy if you can, and stock up on that toilet paper apparently because it's running out. So, Jonathan, Ryan, anything?
Well, I have plenty of toilet paper, but I for now, I'm more worried about like the end of my 2 week stint of working from home. Am I still going to be able to get normal amounts of normal things?
I mean, you're cute that you think it's only be 2 weeks.
Yeah, I can see this being 3 months.
That's a long time to go without showering. I don't know if that's nice.
I mean, a lot of the other FANG companies here in the Bay, they've already announced 30 days or 60 days. So they're talking about not coming back till end of April.
Yeah, Capital One today too announced they're sending people home. But it's like security though at the airport. As soon as you start making people take their shoes off, no one is ever going to say, okay, you don't need to take your shoes off anymore, because that's just an invitation for somebody to put bombs in their shoes again. I think just like this work from home thing, it's just going to be, are you going to be the company that told your people to come back and now 5% of your workforce is dead? I mean, it's going to be so hard to get back out to the work from home thing. And I'm looking forward to the traffic in the Bay Area, and I'm also looking forward to not working in an open office. I'm not sure which is worse, a 5-year-old or the open office. I'm thinking it may be the open office.
I'm hoping that we can prove to people at our day jobs that working from home is very effective, and we can actually have higher productivity. So that's my goal for my team, at least in this time, is like let's really prove how amazing work from home could be.
Yeah,
that's my goal.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, do stay healthy, you guys, and we will see you next week here at the Cloud Pod.
Goodbye, adios, whatever we're going to say. See you later.
I'm just going to wave silently like people can see me. It's just easier.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting and Blue Medora. Check out our website, the home of the Cloud Pod, where you can join our newsletter, Slack team, send feedback, or ask questions at thecloudpod.net, or tweet us at #thecloudpod.